Okay.
Nosheen, I'll start. You started. Okay. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the 10th and the last session in this lecture series by Sudhakar sir. The topic for today is dealing with disheartening news and information overload. Um, by the end of this video, we have a little something that we have done it. So I request all of you to stick around for as long as possible. And I request again for the last time, keep yourself on mute. Do not share your screen. And in the question answer round, if you have a question, put it on the chat. I have a question, or type out your question and we'll read it out for you. Thank you so much. So you can start the session.
Yeah, somebody had a question. I'll start with that. Somebody to leave. Who is that?
Chaitanya, you can ask your question.
Yeah.
Yeah, so sir, I just want to know that since we are living in a world where everything can be quantified and everything can be measured, there are so many economists in the world who can actually measure the variables and how each variable impacts the other variable. So, sir, if we look at the aspect of news, the media in India, a lot of them try to induce fear is what I feel. And if you could talk about Hegelian dialectic, which is actually used to desire a certain outcome out of changing few variables by inducing fear or something like that. So if you could talk a little bit about Hegelian dialectic and how it's implemented.
Now, see, one is, the kind, the question, your question is very specific. First of all, a lot of these dialectics operate in a perfect situation. What's a perfect situation where all players are understanding the rules, where you're focusing on rational thinking, and we're only looking at facts. But again, when you talk about facts, we can often be selective about facts. When you
Yeah.
talk about the media scene, the problem with media scene is that there's so much of competition for TRPs. So everybody is wanting eyeballs. So therefore, they're competing in terms of populist communication. So the any kind of dialectic will need a certain basic ground rules, and basic ground rules are not in place. So therefore, whether you say it is sticking to facts, or is it being rational, is it being non-emotional, we don't follow any rules. So when you don't follow rules, then it's impossible for us to have to be able to use quantitative things. Second, when you're talking about quantitative things itself, a lot of people like Kahneman I mentioned, or even Taleb, they said that these numbers are also in a certain context. You can't really apply them across because things change. Human beings have cognitive biases, a lot of other things. So therefore, a lot of these rules in actual practice don't work. And therefore, even what we say is GDP and all of that are basically approximations. Even if you look at the work of Abhijit Banerjee, they said all these are numbers, are approximation or imagined numbers, because real numbers we don't know because so many facts are not in place. While we quantify what is available, the quantification does not include everything which needs to be there. And therefore, the kind of outcomes we can have and everything is there is itself not possible. Second, human beings are a mix of rational and non-rational. Okay. Second, our thinking process has so many dimensions which prevents for any kind of complete rational exchange.
Makes sense. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Now for the good evening. Welcome to the evening session, the last session. Uh, First, I want to start with a list of books. Uh, Yesterday, there was a question asked on are there any good books on rivers of India? There is one book by Vaidyanathan Sunil, Rivers of India, which is fairly good and fairly recent. But there is a book which is Ecology of Indian Rivers by Shankar Yuni. Shankar Yuni has written a lot of books on Indian rivers, but many of his books are fairly old. So Vaidyanathan Sunil books may be recent and which you can look at. There are separate books on each of the Sankaran Unni himself has written separate books on rivers of India. So these are two books which I thought I can give. There was also in after my session in the morning, there was a question asked on are there any books on mental health? One book which I really liked, which I thought was which looks at a broad thing right from understanding mental health policy. It's a book called Noonday Demons. Okay. Now, Noonday Demon is by Andrew Solomon. Noonday's Demon is by Andrew Solomon. And the subtitle is An Atlas of Depression, because this is something which is interesting. Then there is another good book which looks at mental health in Indian context, especially in the context of depression and related issues. It's a book called The D Word. Okay? The D Word, W-R-D. It's by a lady, Subrata Prakash. And because the book in Indian context, the examples are Indian, and maybe it is easy for you, for all of us to maybe able to look at and relate to it better. Then there is this psychologist called David Burns. I've used some of his books on self-esteem and workbooks, etc. So I find him good. But again, a lot of his work is possibly more than 10 years old, or maybe even earlier. So he has written a book called On Panic Attacks, looking at various kinds of challenges to mental health. But two books is something called Feeling Good, the New Mood Therapy. And then a sequel to that is called Feeling Good Together. So how do you build community of support and things like that? So these are books which you could look at. The Noonday Demon, books by David Burns, Feeling Good Together, and then Panic Attacks. These are books which I would recommend for us to look at. Before I start the session, I want to take up questions which have been asked. There were two questions which were raised in a private message. I want to deal with them first, and then I look at the list which Abhishek sent me. I will discuss those questions. The first question was asked by Priyanjana, and she said, when you're talking about a lot of self-care, aren't we becoming self-centered? One of the important things when you talk about self-care is we're talking about emotional and mental well-being. What is emotional mental well-being? That is, we are balanced enough to be able to respond adequately to fears, dangers, threats, not being overwhelmed. Second, mental well-being also includes social well-being. So it's a balance between a sense of self and connecting to the sense of people around us. So good self-care is basically about dealing with areas of hurt, areas of vulnerability, areas of weakness. So therefore, that's something which we are talking about. So when we feel low, so self-care is important to make us feel better. When we feel, when people accuse us, attack us, and we feel very low, hurt, then what are the kind of things to get back to? So self-care is about taking care of our emotional needs. It's not about obsession with ourselves, it's not narcissism. So that is something which I want to clarify. The second is where questions raised, issues raised by Carolyn, who's a psychology student. So she had an issue with when I said the past is dead. So she said, aren't we shaped by our past? The past also has a lot of source of strength, source of achievement. The past is about memories. So there are a lot of things in which, instances where we have overcome difficulties also offers hope for the future. I agree with all of that. When I said the past is dead, my focus is in terms of we sometimes relive things which have hurt us, which make us feel low, or which have affected our self-esteem. So reliving those moments all the time, thinking, why should I say this? Why did I do that? How could I have said that? So when you constantly relive, you are sucking energy out of the present. You're sucking energy about things which you can correct, things which you can do. So therefore, that is what I said in terms of events which happened in the past. In that sense, you can't keep reliving them. So how do I move on? I will need to look at the context and say, this is the context in which I reacted. Maybe I was feeling low. There were a lot of things said which I felt threatened, and therefore I reacted in this way. And maybe I am overemphasizing my reaction over other things. So that is what we mean by coming to terms with. So these are two questions which I thought I will answer. Then there's a question about this whole question about self-esteem, loneliness, and introversion. How are they connected? One of the biggest problems in our society, maybe India and elsewhere, is we attach too much importance to our physical and external dimensions. Our self-esteem is too connected too much to by the way we think we look or by the way others think we look. So a lot of times we need reinforcement about the fact that we look okay and whatever else. So therefore, because we give so much of importance to the physical, it's so very easy for people to affect our sense of well-being by body shaming. Okay? Again, because we give so much importance to certain dimensions of looks, which allow people to body shame us. Second, in terms of, we also, society wants people to be perfect. So society does not know how to deal with people with different kinds of disabilities. So people with disabilities often don't get even necessary care because people are not trained how to deal with people who are different. Okay. We're talking, maybe I shouldn't use the word disability, even people with different abilities. Society doesn't know how to care, how to take care of them. So a lot of times they feel left out of a lot of activities, a lot of things because society, teachers, everybody deals with what they consider to be normal set. And since we're diverse, there cannot be one normal set. And that is why a lot of people feel alone because a lot of people who people are similar to them, connect to them, and therefore don't have enough time and energy for those who are different. And that sometimes pushes people not to expect others. And therefore we try and become comfortable with ourselves. Because when you say introversion, introversion is where we get a lot of energy through our own thoughts. I mean, a lot of our learning comes by playing ideas in our head. It's not just being in terms of shy. Introversion is not shyness. Introversion is not being alone. Introversion is being comfortable with mental processes within. Extroverts are those who get stimulated by bouncing ideas of people. And all of us are a mix of introversion and extroversion. And this is something that's important. I see myself as a strong introvert. But I often choose to live in a city like Mumbai because a lot of time people ask me, why don't you live in the hills? Because I enjoy the stimulus of people, ideas and books, which is in Mumbai, which I may not get elsewhere. So all of us are in this continuum of extroversion, introversion. And some of us push to seek our own company because we are scared that people may reject us or we have not had good experience of people being able to deal with us in a way which we are comfortable. So therefore, that is something. So we need to figure out how we can correct this by strengthening ourselves and by seeking community networks. So therefore, that's one question which I wanted to answer. I hope that answered the question by Ajay and a few others. The second question is in terms of how can I raise energy levels in a short period? One, I can give suggestions, but this whole uh, penchant for or tendency for looking for quick solutions cannot let us deal with things fully. So if you want immediate answers in terms of how do you raise energy levels in a short period, one is in terms of doing good breathing exercises. So those of you who like yoga, those of you who know a little bit about yoga, doing pranayam and various other kinds of kapalbhati and all these other exercises. Sometimes in terms of increases blood circulation, there's more oxygen in the system, which also then energizes us. So therefore, that's one way of looking at it. Second is in terms of short bursts of physical activity, which can also pump up adrenaline, maybe skipping things at one place, where whatever is possible, that's one. The third, of course, is in terms of something which boosts positive energy, whether it's laughter, connecting with positive people, all of that can boost. But we must be able to understand what is it that is getting energy levels low. Are we too tired? Okay. Sometimes, I don't know how many of you, some of you may remember, I always talk about something called the SHALT principle. What is the SHALT principle? There are times when you're sad, hungry, angry, lonely, tired. All these are things which bring down energy levels. So we must address them. What is the cause for sadness? Can we deal with it? The quick fix, or is it something which can need some more focus? If I'm feeling lonely, can I find ways to connect with people? If I'm angry, how do I channelize my anger? How do I understand what is the source of anger? Tiredness is get sleep, get rest, eat for hungry, etc. So therefore, we need to figure out what are the sources of what is causing low energy. Also, sometimes we are feeling low, we don't understand why. That is because we have allowed a lot of things to build up. One of the most important things is, I want everyone to understand that they are the most important persons in their life. If they're feeling troubled, if they're feeling upset, hurt, angry, don't let anyone feel, oh, it's such a small thing. The fact that it upsets us means it's either attacked our vulnerability, or it has disrespected us, or it has made us feel small, or whatever. So you need to acknowledge that this has happened to you. So don't let anyone make you forget it because it's upsetting you. So therefore you need to deal with it. So sometimes close friends are not sensitive when we're feeling low or upset. And therefore deal with it. Maybe you need to talk to them or need to talk to somebody else who can understand what you're going through. Empathy is very important. Empathy from yourself and empathy from others. So first thing is, in terms of if you're feeling low, please understand, and you can't put a finger on what it is. It are multiple things which have happened. Second, you are underestimated the impact of a certain thing which possibly is important for you, but you keep telling yourself, oh, I can deal with it, it's not so important. So therefore, please address it. Address the fact that you're feeling rejected, low, have support system. If you want to seek help, seek help. Because this is something which is, and I want you to tell you this, because unless you acknowledge grief and things like that in a way which is important, it will constantly keep sucking away at your energy. I'll give you two examples. One, in 2010, my mother died, and my father and others were in bad shape. So I thought maybe I need to be strong for them. And I didn't really give myself enough time to grieve. I was very close to mother. I went through a year of depression because I didn't really allow myself to grieve and deal with it. So therefore, sometimes we need to ask ourselves, is there something I'm not giving enough importance to? Second, in 2016, after 16 years of being with the BM department, I left for whatever reasons. And maybe there was a lot of hurt and anger, which I kept telling myself, I can move on, it doesn't affect me so much. Possibly there was a lot of things, because I invested so much of myself in it, that leaving affected me a lot. And it took me a lot of time to deal with it. So sometimes there are things which we say is not so important. Please understand it may be more important than you wish to acknowledge. So if you're feeling out of sorts, ask yourself, what is it in the last 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, which has happened, which was possibly important, I've not dealt with, I must deal with it. Next, yoga, vipassana help in terms of managing your energy and emotions, but it cannot deal with unresolved issues in your mind, unresolved issues in your psyche. So that is something which we need to do. So please give yourself importance. Don't let anyone make you feel, or you don't let yourself feel this. If something is affecting you, it's important for you at the moment. If you deal with it, maybe you can move on. If you don't, it'll just fester. It can become much worse. So therefore, I hope that answers. The next question is extremely important in terms of when you're talking with mental health. One segment which has been neglected along with people with disabilities and possibly much more is women. There is very little research done on a lot of health issues, emotional issues of women. And a lot of times doctors don't take it seriously. And especially this has got reinforced after I read the book Invisible Women. There's an entire chapter or 2 chapters which looks at that. Please read that book. It'll also maybe make you relate to that, because that's something that's important. So therefore, even right from things in terms of issues dealing with menstruation, pre and postnatal care, menopause, all of these. There are not enough studies, there are not enough support systems, there are not enough care providers for this, which are available easily. So therefore, that's one area which is very, very important, because these are things which have deal with a lot of hormonal changes, a lot of issues with the body, which we have chosen not to acknowledge. A lot of times, many of us are not able to deal with the issue of aging. So these are things which we have to deal with. So therefore, whoever asked the question, there is a lot of work need to be done. Again, if some of you can figure out how we can address this and we can have more conversation, it's important. One comment was, yes, that while my talk may be useful in different ways, it's one to many. Actually, we should have conversations that all of us can talk, exchange, respond. I don't know how we can create it on an online forum in an effective way. If some of you can think of it, figure out and organize that. Maybe we can also try and get somebody who possibly is much better, better or well versed in psychology. Maybe that person will be able to offer better solutions than what I've suggested. So these are some of the questions. Abhishek, are there any questions which I've not dealt with?
No, sir. I think we have covered most of it. Yeah.
Yeah. One of the things which I want us to look at is that in the morning I talked about the issue of sleep. They say if you continue to be sleep deprived, okay, it can affect health in many, many ways. It can also lead to stress. And the other problem is stress also affects sleep. And one of the things is sleep has different phases, and all phases have their role in resting the body. And one of the important things is dreams. Okay, dreams are trying to resolve problems and issues which happen during the day, and therefore they happen in ways which are visual, which seem to be unconnected, but they deal with things which we have been thinking about, or subconsciously we've been dealing without. Dreams are a very important role. They're supposed to resolve the problems which are happening in our lives. So don't let dreams stress you out. Dreams suggest that these are areas which we have not really resolved, and we need to think about it. We need to give us self-care, because this area of our life is stressing us out a lot. So for that is something which we must look at in terms of how are we responding to dreams, how are we dealing with sleep. So in this situation, a lot of people are suffering from insomnia. And insomnia happens because we are, there is a lot of building up of anxiety. And anxiety may be, sometimes anxiety is because of multiple dimensions. Multiple dimensions is economic concerns and fears, this whole fear of death, this whole fear of falling ill, fear of what can happen if something happens like this whole anxiety because of being alone, of lacking social contact and social space. All of that is something which is creating a lot of anxiety. So therefore, we will need to understand that, and therefore figure out how we can deal with this. Uh, Coming to the current problem, one of the important things to understand is that the current pandemic, as it has um, uh, evolved, is something where there has been no precedent. There's been nothing like this in our living memory. There's nothing like this in terms of our, even in terms of history. A lot of people compare this with the plague. The plague affected certain places, certain people. There were a lot of deaths, but it was a world which was not so interconnected. There was a world with a lot of community support systems. This has happened in a world which is atomized. This has happened in a world where social security is very low. Family support systems have also disintegrated in terms of joint families and things like that. So this is something which has no precedent. And therefore for us, the very pandemic itself is a source of a lot of stress. Second, when we hear news, okay, especially those of us living in Mumbai, Pune, or wherever else, suddenly when the news and you say numbers are rising, there is a lot of fear. One fear is possibly this will never going to end. Okay? That is something which is a fear for a lot of people. Why? Because they're all people who hold on to these silver lining and optimism. So when the lockdown started in March, we all said, oh, maybe by April 3rd week we will get out of this. And April 3rd week came, then we said, no, we will go on till maybe May 3rd week. And then May 3rd week said, no, we'll go on till end of May. And end of May has come and gone, and then we said end of June. And therefore, this is something, and in addition to the fact that this is continuing, there's no end, we keep listening to news which says, oh, and so when people call us up from elsewhere, they say, oh, Bombay is still bad. And that makes us feel worse. So therefore, constant exposure to news is not a healthy thing. You know, when I was young, which was a long time ago, the only news channel was Doordarshan. And I remember when in 1984, October 31st, Mrs. Indira Gandhi died. And then for the next 3 weeks, that's the only channel, and for the next 3 weeks, there was no entertainment, there was no programming. There was only what was called Sarangi Vadam. Whole day, so therefore, and of course, a lot of things. So at that, so I was not stressed out that there is nothing else in the news except something dealing with Indira Gandhi. We didn't have 24-hour news channels till 1995, 90s. And we were quite comfortable. We would get news the next morning. Sometimes we didn't get that. It was not important. Now all of us have got addicted to knowing what happened. So maybe all of us, we will need to do some detox. Decide that I will only look at news once a day. There's too much of this information, I think, is not good for any of us. What is going to change? Nothing is going to change. What is the dramatic thing which is happening? Nothing is happening. So what is this need to know, every 1 hour, every half an hour, every 15 minutes? So therefore, that is something which is important. Second, the rising numbers, we're also hearing about rising deaths. How many of us clearly understand in terms of numbers which talk about the number of people who have recovered? The number of people who have recovered are far more than the number of people who have died or who have reached that. Also, when you talk about the number of people who have died, look at the context in which deaths have taken place. What were the comorbidities? Okay, and also there are a lot of people among the elderly who have quarantined themselves. They're doing well. And I'm sure there are many people in our family, elders, who are doing very well. Their examples suggest that elderly people are coping, younger people are coping. Large numbers of us are coping. It is true that there is a problem that we didn't anticipate that so many people will die. We didn't anticipate that maybe our health system may not be adequate. And therefore, yes, there is this thing in terms of you're not able to see a clear roadmap. But one of the things I want you to understand is also learn to look at things in perspective. Okay? Look at cases, look at cities, look at states in India. Okay? Look at Goa, look at Kerala, look at lots of states which have managed this very well, where they have a lot of people who come from outside, they manage infections. A lot of places things are decreasing. Look at the story of Dharavi itself, where things are improving quite a bit. It is a congested place where there are issues of hygiene, and there are also mixed population of old people, young people. There is so much for us to kind of believe that things will get better. That's one part of it. The second part of it, yes, along with this uncertainty, there are other things which can cause us a lot of stress. One stress is if I am a person who is concerned with what is happening to people who belong to minorities, or if I'm a minority myself. The unfortunate thing, while this uncertainty is happening, there's also a lot of people who are still indulging in polarization. We're blaming communities, we're attacking communities. So a lot of people, their fears and insecurities get heightened at this time. So this is something which is important. One, if I belong to a minority community which is being targeted, so I have a lot of fear for my family, my relatives, my friends, my community, and myself. And second, I'm not able to understand why this hatred is there. And I don't know how to respond to this. Because there's no way of responding to hate. There's no way of responding to hate in a way which you know now. Because this hate is often deep-rooted. This hate is something which is visceral. And in this kind of hate, maybe conversation is not possible. Therefore, I need to first understand this and therefore say that how can we take it? So I need to have conversations with people who are positive, who can help address my fear, who understand my fear. And those of us who are not minorities, and those of us who don't have friends among minorities, or those who have not experienced this ever, please develop sensitivity. Because a lot of time we tell people, oh, you're worrying unnecessarily. Nobody worries unnecessarily. Worry is not a good emotion. Worry happens because there are reasons why we worry. So if we can understand this, and if we can make our college spaces and others conducive for everybody, respectful of everybody, okay, maybe it is helpful. So therefore, that's a lot we have to do to do this, because this is one other issue in terms of which I want to say, because what happens in society affects us, and affects us very, very deeply. And therefore, this is something. So how do we also look at how there are many people in the majority who are very supportive of minority communities, who are fighting for them. There are also people among minority communities who are also building bridges. Look at these stories. Let us be a part of this solution building. Third, social media can also be a very, very harsh place, with the kind of hate speech, with the kind of, in terms of, various kinds of trolling. It can become difficult for us even to express our opinion. So this fear of expressing what we think is important is something which also can be paralyzing. Often a lot of us also have this fear that we are being hypocritical if you don't take a stand. And we are also scared because if you take a stand, the consequences can be very, very tough. And therefore, in that sense, please understand, a lot of these things, whether labels like hypocrites, are subjective. Even if you believe strongly, please find the right occasion to take a stand. A stand is meaningful if the space is conducive. Okay. When nobody is listening, taking a stand does not help. So please choose your space for taking a stand, for confronting when you're comfortable. Build strength first. And this very important thing that some people are taking a stand. I was talking about the example of Akar Patel, and the cases filed against him. But Akar Patel has cushions. His support system, he is for the system, he understands, he belongs to the majority community. In spite of whatever else, there are cushions which help him. So if you're not able to take a stand, please understand, maybe you don't have cushions. And there'll be time and opportunity for cushions. So don't, in this time when you're going through one kind of stress, please don't add to your stress that I'm not doing enough. At the moment, if all of us are handling ourselves in these uncertain times, you're doing enough. Your immune system can only be strengthened if you're positive, if you're happy. Figure out how you're going to be happy. Okay. And so therefore, and studies have shown, I've sent you an Economist article. I don't know how many of you have read it. It talked about a study done by a Harvard professor. He studied a large number of students. Their performance got affected whenever there was, especially among children who belong to African American community. Their academic performance suffered whenever there was violence against African Americans by the police. I hope you've read the article. Please read the article. So psychologically, we can get affected if there's violence around us, targeting other human beings or people like us. And therefore, we need to figure that out. And when I forwarded this article to Abhishek to be put on the group, I also forwarded to this former student of mine who is in Southeast Asia, Shilpa Rao, and she read the article. She said, uh, do we know how people in conflict zones who live in the Northeast, whether it's in Manipur or Tripura or Meghalaya, or let us take the case of Kashmir. Uh, I remember in 2007, for the first time, I had taken students to Srinagar. I went to Kashmir University, and we had special sessions with students and we had special sessions with staff. And a lot of the students talked about their source of stress because of continued searches, curfews, blocks, questioning. And there was a lot of pain and angst. And I remember when we came back from the session, the students were shell shocked because they had never experienced anybody having gone through this kind of pain. So for us to understand what people maybe for the past 3 decades in Kashmir have been going through, what were the reasons? Okay. What has happened to people, the Kashmiri Pandits, when they had to move, shift, and many of them still have not been able to adjust because they still don't have a place which is their own. So there are multiple uh, uh, kinds of pain. And when we read about that pain, it can also affect us. So therefore understand, yes, figure out, okay, let us focus on solutions. Because getting overwhelmed by pain and suffering of others doesn't help us, nor does it allow us to help them. So if you have to build systems of support, we will need to understand, yes, this is a problem. What kind of responses can we have? Before I move on, those of you who feel that you don't know enough about the Northeast, there are many authors, many of them very good. My favorite author is this person called Sanjay Hazarika, Sunjoy Hazarika. His first book was a book called Strangers in the Mist, and the second book, which is like a sequel, is called Strangers No More. This will give you a fair understanding of what are the kind of things which have happened in the Northeast. In some of the states or many of the states of the Northeast, maybe you'll get an understanding. But unless we spend time with them, unless they think they can trust us enough to share their stories, a lot of us will not share their stories. I remember this was maybe about 15 years ago. I remember one when we were talking about it, this was at the time when Sharmila Irom had started her fast to death against HASPA and things like that. And one of the students she was discussing in class, she broke down because she said, my grandmother was raped by security forces. Okay, so when you experience pain of that kind of thing, it can affect you very deeply. So therefore, so many people have lived such things, lived through such experiences. I'm sure a lot of us have lived through other kinds of abuses in our community, in our families. So whether it is physical abuse, sexual abuse, emotional abuse, all of it makes us vulnerable. So therefore, we will need to find ways to heal our vulnerabilities, to convert our weak points into strong points. So my suggestion about this is in terms of one, in terms of ration. Okay, choose how much of news you will give exposure to. Second, in terms of this is something which is happening. So adopt what I call a proactive approach. So what are the ways in which we can help? Okay. In the lockdown situation, one of the problems is when I see people suffering. Now, of course, a lot of us were very traumatized when we saw images of poor people walking without slippers in the heat, often carrying old people. Okay. These images are something which are heart-wrenching. Okay. Definitely, it is very, very difficult for us. And then there's a sheer sense of helplessness. We are locked down. We can't reach out. We can't help. So therefore, what is the kind of things we can do? So can we create public opinion to reach out to them, maybe, or reach out to people who can help them? I still don't know what the solutions can be, but I can understand how a lot of us felt when those images, when it was happening, things like that. So therefore, it is very, very difficult. And also, I was talking about, I think, I don't know whether Priyanka is on the session, she was sharing with me that her friends and she were volunteers to give food and water and chas to people traveling by Shramik trains. And people are packed like sardines. It was so heart-wrenching to see them desperate to get some nourishment, water, because they were traveling without proper ventilation, in the heat, a lot of things. So therefore, it's very difficult for us. So choose or figure out where is it that you can reach out to help. And that is something which I think we will need to do. But understand it's normal for us to experience pain, frustration, helplessness. So find out what are the emotional tools you will need to strengthen yourselves to deal with this situation. Okay. I think I've exceeded my time in terms of talking. I don't know whether I've addressed all the questions. So now Sheen and Suhasini, you're part of the team. Is there anything which I have not covered which I need to cover? Please go through your notes, initial note which you sent me in terms of topics and issues,
Yes.
especially dealing with mental health. So then we'll open it up for questions.
No, sir, we've nothing left.
Okay. So just let me also deal with in terms of uh, there are three sections of people who we need to find ways to help. One is health workers. For health workers, in terms of it can be very stressful when they're constantly dealing with people who are unwell, who need help, and there is nobody to take care of their own emotional and physical needs. So sometimes that's something we need to figure out. How are we appreciating them? Are we finding ways to help them? Second, in terms of a lot of the police force is overworked because they're constantly monitoring. Because when I go cycling in the morning, I can see policemen and women. They're there from 5 in the morning to make sure that people are maintaining physical distancing. So in many places, it's very difficult for them to control crowds. People don't listen, and they've been on duty continuously. And the other people whom we need to understand is in terms of journalists. A lot of journalists fell ill because they had very little protective gear. Their organization not supporting them. So there are a lot of these are three sections. Maybe there are other people, a lot of people who've been doing relief work, providing food and other kind of things. So maybe we need to find in terms of how do we support them, how do we appreciate them. Okay, so therefore that's something which I thought I must mention when we are talking about this. So therefore, when you're talking about mental health, it is a continuous process of self-care. And be conscious of what are the kind of things which can often upset the delicate balance. And also respect your feelings, understand your feelings, figure out how you can express them. Also, one major problem which I have not dealt with is that in this situation, in a lot of places, there is a lot of huge increase in domestic violence. In confined spaces, in terms of people, the stronger people, men and others, in terms of there has been lacking empathy. Second, there's also a lot of lack of empathy people and especially young people sometimes have been pampered by their parents not to do much. So even at this time, sometimes parents are doing jadu pocha, they're doing cooking, they're doing their work, they're taking care. And we all feel, oh, yeah, I'm feeling low, please pamper me. So I think all of us need to take care of each other. Okay. So that's something in terms of, so if we can provide support for those who are victims of domestic violence, emotional violence can happen. And often emotional abuse and emotional violence is not seen easily. And also a lot of us sometimes normalize emotional abuse. It's okay to think to rant at people who are close to us and think, they are responsible. But they're also, all of us are struggling. And therefore, we need to understand and respect this. Therefore, it's not easy for anyone. And so all of us are travelers in this difficult journey. Lend out, be supportive, be forgiving. In the morning, we talked a lot about forgiving. Please don't hold grudges. Forgive yourself, forgive others. Uh, those of you who haven't heard the song, we are not there for the morning session. Please listen to the song Forgiveness by Matthew West. I like the song. I hope you like it as well. Listen to it, think about it. Maybe that's a useful thing. And spread a lot of positive energy. It's good for us to be cheerful, positive. It is something which is very, very, life affirming. If you're cheerful, it's very nice when I see faces on the screen now. Many of you are smile easily. I don't smile easily, so it's good to see people who can smile easily. It energizes everybody. So smile, spread smile. Please have a lot of video chats with your friends. WhatsApp messages and chats are not. WhatsApp messages are extremely inadequate. They're impersonal. They don't help. So if you can reach out, have video chats, do lots of things to connect with lots of people through the day, connect with people, find out when they are free. Of course, my biggest problem is that this online work is a curse, because online work means there are no boundaries between work time and I just talking to someone before I started the session. People are doing far more work. So you're working from 9 in the morning to 8, and there's a lot of pressure. So give yourself breaks. So connect with people. So if people are tired in the evening, cheer them up. Most of you are not morning people. I'm a morning person. A lot of my messages come at 4 or 5 in the morning, but that's my time. You figure out which is the best time to connect to people. So that's all I have to say. This is my last session with you before I take questions. Thank you very much. It is, for me, when I looked at the topics when they first said me, it was very daunting. If you look at the topics, it's so wide-ranging. And so much of it is outside my normal teaching. These are topics which I not normally dealt with. So it is sometimes the question answers can also, it gets very intense. So at the end of the session, sometimes I'm so drained, I'm just sitting for some time. Or sometime after I have dinner, I wish somebody could take my hand and wash it for me. But it has been a very interesting journey. I have been enriched and I've learned a lot from all of you, because the questions have been very, very interesting. It has helped me correct my own communication. It has made me look at things which I have possibly not looked at. So thank you very much. So we will take up questions. Let me look at the questions now.
So before we go to the question and answer, can we take a 5-minute break? Abhishek wants to play a video for you.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. Abhishek.
Hello, sir. This is Abhishek.
Can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay, sir.
Talking to you from 3 to 4 hours from the past. So I'm in a time machine right now, getting some vitamin D. Uh, I remember in one of the lectures you mentioned that it feels like you are talking to a wall. So uh, some of your students have a few words for you. So please sit back and relax.
Hi, sir. Thank you so much for your lectures. It has truly felt like we were transported back to college. Of course, what I missed the most were your handouts and the occasional duster that will fly and hit our heads. But it was so good to watch you teach again, and as usual, learned so much.
This lecture series has helped me to think about so many issues which otherwise I wouldn't. I really enjoyed the session on mental health. It was so much needed. It was a great help.
It felt so good after so long to come together with so many people and try and find the answers which are blowing in the wind. And thank you, sir, for helming that search and helping us give a sense of direction and purpose to it.
And the one thing I'll always keep with myself is your idea of questioning yourself, everyone, even the teacher who's teaching you, because that's one thing no one ever taught me.
It's amazing how much research you've done on each of the topics, and you've always pushed me into doing more research, reading, and reflecting, and always pushing us to get more critical in our thinking, flexible, and tolerant.
I feel the topic that you have covered is quite informative, and in these tough times of Corona, it's very difficult to get these information.
The 1 week lecture series was really a good experience, a much needed mental stimuli during this lockdown. It was extremely informative and, above all, reflective. So, thank you for that. And a special thanks to the team that was behind this. Guys, you guys were amazing, each and every one of you.
I can't read that. What is it?
It is by Nausheen.
Yeah.
It's a Calvin and Hobbes.
Yes.
Calvin says, "What's the tiger says, what's the meaning of life as we know it, Calvin?" And Calvin says the answer, Hobbes, is blowing in the wind.
Conducting these sessions.
The answer is blowing in the wind. That's what he says. The meaning of life.
They were really amazing. It's always a pleasure to listen to you. And even today, when you spoke about mental health, it is important that we stop self flagellating ourselves, because we tend to do that. And we all are different individuals, and we take our own time to be productive and useful. And
Getting this opportunity in the time of lockdown was a total bliss. So thank you very much, sir, for these thought-inducing lectures, which gave me something to read about, something to think about, and it gave me a sense of productivity, which is actually missing in the time of lockdowns.
So the feeling of being an idealistic college kid all over again, who could discuss varied topics within the safety of the classroom and a certain sense of normal had prevailed, was indeed very self-assuring.
सर आपके लिए क्या कहूँ, ए सूरज तेरी कदरदानी है कि ये अंधेरा भी रोशन है.
Thank you, sir, for giving us some amazing book recommendations and beautiful quotes. Thank you, sir, for listening to us patiently and motivating us to keep a positive approach towards life. Thank you, sir, for conditioning our minds to find a solution to every problem according to our capacities rather than just cribbing or complaining about it. Thank you, sir, for always keeping us hopeful that things will be better and that we can make them better.
Amidst all the negativity and everything happening with this COVID-19 and so many things happening all around the world, Sudhakar sir is giving us such positive energy.
thank you, sir, for conducting these amazing sessions during the lockdown. It really helped me because, I'm a factory worker in a burger factory. So after a very tiring day, listening to your sessions was so much of fun. And I really miss Wilson.
I hope that brought a smile to your face, sir.
Yes,
As you
yes.
can see, you're not speaking to a wall. There are literally hundreds of people all around the world who are listening to you right now and are really glad that you took the time and effort to make this possible. Thank you very much for your generosity. We all love you so much. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much for all the time and effort you've taken.
I think,
Thank
sir,
you.
you're just amazing. Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you for being my living example of stoicism. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and I really hope you do more of these lectures very often. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sudhakar sir.
It has been really great to attend these sessions. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for kind of reinvigorating curiosity.
Sudhakar sir, thank you so much.
Thank you very much, sir.
लाखों में इंतखाब के काबिल बना दिया, जिस दिल को तुमने देखा दिल बना दिया. By Mohammad Qadri. Thank you, all you guys. Big thank you. Sudhakar sir,
I can't read on what is that.
we love you.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
That's it, sir. Thank you very
Yeah.
much.
Thank you. That was lovely. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Lovely. Okay. So we'll do the question answers now.
Sure.
The first one is from Vishal. So a few days earlier, you spoke to us regarding topics such as apathy and care or compassion. In context to that, my concern is nowadays when one looks towards his people, that is friends, colleagues, partners, leaders who are preaching and fighting for certain causes which are either of universal relevance and concern to humanity or of personal importance to them. My question is, if even after trying to care for these causes and to be more sensitive towards them out of a guilt conscience, if one can't care much about them, then whether it is worse to be unapologetically apathetic or putting up a face of fake compassion regarding these causes.
Okay. Yeah. The first thing is, see, all of us have uh, different things which touch us, and all of us can only do a little bit to make the world around us better. Okay. Some of us care for human beings and other forms of life as well. Some people, so all of us are equipped to help to reach out in a certain way. So choose what is it that you can deal with. We cannot be really sensitive and empathetic to everything. So therefore, and definitely anything fake is for me avoidable. Why should we be fake? So we can choose what is it that we will be concerned about. It'll be good if you are well informed. Why well informed? Because it'll make sure that we are sensitive and if you're put in that situation. But to respond to different situations, you choose the issue or situation where you can help. Like in this pandemic, a lot of us couldn't help as we would have helped otherwise because of a lot of constraints. So if you have even been listening to somebody who's been in distress or whatever, that's good enough. Or if you are helping people come up with new ideas and to help, that's also good enough. So choose what is possible for you. Please do not pressurize yourself to feel or think in a certain way. You must do what is possible for you given your current level of energy and capability. That's something which is very, very uh, important. Uh, Please focus on that. Do not, as Payush also mentioned, this whole idea of self-flagellation. Don't beat yourself for what you think you should be doing. There's nothing you should be doing. Do what is possible. Do what is relevant for you. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. A question from Parikshit. Sir, I feel one. Okay. Persistent depressive disorder, PDD, mostly seen in Indian community. Doctors usually treat PDD with a combination of antidepressants and psychotherapy, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, SSRIs, and serotonin norepinephrine reuptake inhibitors, SNRIs, and tricyclic antidepressants are often used. These totally cost around 1.5 lakhs in Indian hospitals. So so this mostly people don't feel like taking the treatment. So isn't the rate of this treatment can it not be reduced since the failure to treatment may lead towards death of that individual?
Okay. See, one thing is about this persistent disorders and things. Is one of the important things that we need to find better solutions other than just medication, because I believe medication is one solution, but there must be other kind of psychological and other support which we have to do capacity building for that. And something else, we also have to invest in mental health. If you look at a lot of government hospitals, they're able to provide physiological help at very affordable rates. And similar thing will have to be done for mental health. So therefore, mental health care in terms of medication becomes affordable for most people. I completely agree that at the moment, mental health care is very expensive, not just for persistent disorders, even for normal mental health issues, it's very expensive. A lot of people can't afford. So therefore, as I mentioned, one in terms of how do we do capacity building. So I talked about this organization called Search in Gadchiroli, which is training people to take care of basic medical needs so that people don't have to go to the hospitals. So similar kind of training and capacity building if we can do in the community, maybe we'll be able to provide better support. But affordable healthcare, mental health care is definitely very, very important. Yeah.
Question from Zubin. Do you think a dopamine detox is a good option in order to limit our addiction to social media, or rather the addiction to screens, so that we spend more time with our own self?
So one is over a period of time, a lot of us have lost touch with meaningful activities. So therefore, that is why, in terms of this addiction to the screen, etc., in terms of that is something easy, because sometimes it is emotionally very expensive to build relationships otherwise. So we need to find how do we build a better community. Second, how do we recreate lots of activities which people can connect to. At one time, going outdoors, doing activities in college was something which engaged people. Maybe a lot of them don't now attract or help. So we need to find, in terms of how do you do community building, what are the kind of activities we can do to do that, to help, and anything which boosts our serotonin, okay, keeps us happy, whether it's laughter, connecting with people. So it will be a combination of anything. So how to do gradual withdrawal is to practice in terms of at least 1 or 2 hours a day where we don't really touch our phones. So in terms of to make sure that there is activity which keeps you away, develop your talents, if you have things like writing, painting, or whatever else, anything, or if you're somebody who likes creative solution, if you like playing with words, so create a routine. I also talked about J. Krishnamurti, who used to make sure that every day, minimum 1 hour he spent writing, whether he was in the mood or not. So there will be different solutions which will be relevant for different people. We'll have to figure out which solution works. Okay, because I cannot have one answer, because your context will decide what is the best solution.
A question from Daniel. I would like to hear your opinion on survivor's guilt, or rather COVID-19 guilt. Is it possible that a lot of the guilt trips or negative feelings that have been on the rise of late are a result of the above mentioned stress disorder?
True, as I said in the morning when I was talking about mental health itself, uh, somehow guilt seems to be a very natural recourse for most of us. And guilt also, because it's with self-blame, or we think that we don't deserve what we get. And that has a lot to do with our cultural conditioning and historically. I don't know how many of you have heard of a person called Augustine. Those who did political science, I'm sure you have heard of a book called City of God. But he was also somebody who was responsible for this idea of original sin, that human beings by nature are sinful. This is from the 5th century. So a lot of time this guilt is because in terms we're blaming ourselves for the fact that we are better off than others or not. My thing is, if we are blessed, we are blessed, we can do something to help those who are less blessed. And for us to have the energy to help other people, we need to address guilt. Because guilt, I definitely strongly feel, is the wasteful emotion. Because if I feel something is wrong, I need to find corrective action. Guilt just sucks energy. Guilt does not lead to anything positive. So that is, yes, survivor guilt is one of the very many kinds of guilt which we inflict ourselves with. So therefore, that's something which we'll need to figure out how to deal with. Yeah.
Omkar wants to ask you a question.
Yeah.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Omkar.
Sir, before I ask my question, I would just like to take 2 minutes of yours and everyone else there. First of all, I would just wish to express my gratitude towards you and towards the entire organizing team. In my notice so far, it has been Abhishek, Suhasini, Shruti, Noshin, and all the guys who are there. Uh, Again, before I ask my question, I would just like to let you know, when this lockdown was there, it started in March, and at that point of time, there was this entire debate going on in media about the Talibigi Jamaat, this guy spreading the coronavirus in India, and the entire virus being taking the Hindu Muslim stand in the media. So at that point of time, I and my friend, we came up with this initiative called IFL, Indians firstly and lastly. In last 3 months, in last 2.5 months, we have served around 3 lakh meals, 3 lakh packets of meals to all the migrants and all the people who are staying on streets right from Churchgate to Dadar. We also served around. Am I audible, sir?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, sir. We also served around 100. We also adopted around 100 families, serving them food grains of collecting donation of around 1.5 lakhs. So the reason why I'm telling this thing is everyone, all around over a period of time, they are kind of trying to appreciate me and my team members about we are doing a great work. But each and every time they come and they try to praise me or they try to appreciate me, the only person coming up in my mind is Mr. Sudhakar Solomonraj, because these are the roots and these are the foundations from where all these things come up. And that was the point when I realized that uh, the Dr. Ambedkar, I could never learn him in his best way apart from what you taught me when he says in the Constituent Assembly that we are Indians firstly and lastly, irrespective of the differences which we have. So so that is the contribution, or that is the place which you have held in our lives. I know this. I can see your
Thank you.
reactions, by the way.
Thank you. It's okay. Come, let's. Is there a question? Yeah. Don't
Yeah.
embarrass me. It's okay. Yeah.
Okay, so I have a question, sir. I personally, I have been a person very much attached to my roots and my culture and my religion, and somehow there is this majority ideology which is in power right now, which is a pro towards culture and traditions and all of those things. Okay, but again, at the same time, being your student and at the same time being a citizen on a personal level, I have been totally against towards the indifference the present establishment has towards the minority communities. However, whenever I try to support whatever are the good initiatives of the government. For example, when I talk about foreign policy of Mr. Modi in his first term, not the second term, but the first term, or certain stands like where they are trying to again bring nationalism and all those things in front. Whenever I'm trying to support the good initiatives of this government, there is this section of media or there is this section of people, they straight away tag me or maybe us as the rightists or extremists or bhakt or whatever. And this is disappointing. I've been very much pro uh, multiculturalism and all those things, diversity and all those things. And so my question is, how do we deal with such kind of attacks when they make?
Okay. The first thing is for us to understand that when you look at reality, you mentioned the Tablighi Jamaat. The media talked about that one, and a lot of people tend to generalize. Similarly, across the country, there have been many other such religious gatherings and groups from other religions as well, but we tended to target one, and therefore that became a part of it. Second, your question, yes, there will always be difference of opinion. There will always be people who either accept what we say, question what we say, and so we need to accept that there will be people who will not be comfortable with our position, and that is okay. It's not necessary that everybody will like everything we say. And second, this whole problem is we have this. Currently, all of us have got into this thing about labeling people according to that, and that there are many things we all need to learn to ignore. I think that is something which helps because how do we respond to this? Yes, that if you know what the truth is, if you believe that you are somebody who respects multiculturalism, but you also believe that you must be fair and appreciate what is there, that is very good. Please go ahead, do what makes sense to you. That's one. Second, as I said, that we all must work towards all of us being sensitive to the concerns of everybody. Sometimes if people say that they don't feel safe and people attack them and say, how can you say that? We don't understand what they're going through. Because even when you're talking about the current pandemic, it has affected different people differently. So if I am able to manage because I have a lot of privilege, doesn't mean others have it so easy. So I personally believe a person like me is extremely blessed, ex-students and everybody has helped, though I stay alone, at neighbors, and I've had so much of support. Not everybody is as blessed. So therefore, we need to understand that. So therefore, please ignore comments if they are made without thinking, whether they're attacking, because that's something which we can't control. What we can control is how we can respond to a situation and how we're taking care of ourselves. Yeah. Okay.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much.
Welcome.
Can I just add this one point, please?
Yeah.
लाखों में इंतखाब के काबिल बना दिया जिस दिल को तुमने देखा
Can
दिल
we
बना
continue,
दिया.
please? Yeah. Let's continue the question.
Thank you.
Okay, question from Tanishka.
Yeah.
Doesn't focusing on positive news make us passive to an extent? Isn't enhancing the problems in our system more important, as that could directly lead to more change? Or should we strive to find a balance?
See, the first thing is I understand that, we all need to highlight what is wrong. But continuously repeating does not change it. Once we highlight something and say, these are the lacuna, these are the things which have been done well, focus on what can we do to reduce the lacuna. I'm not just saying balancing. I'm saying we must push towards the fact that we have identified this. Repeating it day in and day on, continuously, does not help anybody. So, as people who are in the profession of enabling people to understand reality better, we must understand, are we able to get other things to the fore which people are not looking at? Okay, that will be our role. Okay, and also acknowledge where there is some positivity. Second, if you look at the American press ethic, what does the American press ethic say? Even in 2001, when the World Trade Center came down, they didn't show a single dead body. They didn't show any gory pictures. Because that's the thing, they said that let's not get gore and this kind of thing into the dining room, hall, and living spaces. So you can choose how to show what has gone wrong, and also look at other things which need to be done, which are being done, which can be done. I think that is the purpose of any kind of journalism. That it also help us move forward? Does it also help release positive energy? Okay, that's the way I would look at it. Highlighting negativity is important, but getting stuck there does not help anybody. We must also look at what else can be done. Is there anybody else who's doing something different? Can we also suggest things which can be done differently? Maybe those are things which I think we can look at. I hope that answers your question. Yeah.
So we have a off-the-topic question from Kadri sir. When do you plan to have the next series of lectures?
I don't plan. This happened because people, and see, the organizers have spent so much of their time. This takes a lot of time. I don't know when this will happen again. Maybe a different bunch of people can take the responsibility. We can see. Yeah.
Okay. Question from Clinton. Unemployment is one of the biggest issue that many are facing, especially graduate students who went abroad to study, have big student loans. Now the whole situation has brought more pressure on them. How can such individuals cope up with this pressure of job insecurity and uncertainty?
No, see, this is something which unfortunately, nobody has really thought of. Nobody is thinking of young people. Nobody is thinking of people who have taken huge loans to study, whether it's in the country or elsewhere. And the fact that with the economy still not reviving, jobs are not happening. It's a huge problem. So therefore, we'll need to figure out what kind of support. Also, when we talk about support, there is very little talk of anybody offering financial support to tide over the problem. So if some of us can think of ways in which foundations and others can help young people who are stuck with large loans to tide over this, maybe that will help. Philanthropists and others, maybe we should figure out how they can help. Because the problem is very severe, and there is need for some kind of concrete help. And also, what are the places in which jobs will pick up soon? Because there are many sectors which will take a lot of time to pick up. So if I'm interested in tourism, if I'm interested in hospitality, all of these sectors have shrunk quite a bit and possibly shrink further. So therefore, that is a great fear. So therefore, if I have what is called transferable skills, for the time being, is there other things which people can help me find out? Maybe that is something which we can do. But we also need to find out other ways in which we can support these people. Yeah.
Question from Shirley. During these times, when we cannot meet people and are facing issues with them, there is no chance to meet and reconcile or even meet other friends and share stuff. How can we cope up with such emotions at this moment when we are dealing with just by ourselves?
Yeah. One, as I said, if you have a supportive community, maybe video chats with people whom you can trust may help. Uh, if there are helplines, there are a lot of helplines now across. For some people, these helplines may help. We'll have to find out multiple ways in which we help ourselves. One, of course, in terms of being kind with ourselves. Stop attacking ourselves if you're not being productive, if you're not. Sometimes we also get very upset if you're sleeping a lot. Sometimes sleep is a good form of escape. Maybe be a little more kind with yourself. And then figure out what kind of support system you can seek. Asking for help is always very good. So find out where you can help, ask for help. People within your known circle, people outside your circle, helpline. Wherever else, maybe that's something which you can definitely ask for.
Yeah, Manali has a question. Manali, you can ask your question.
Hello.
Yes, Manali.
Yeah. Sir, my question was slightly personal. Both my parents are doctors, and my sister is a doctor. Her husband is a doctor. So I see my parents going to work every day, and this is something which I've not been able to talk to them about because I fear that I'll be spreading fear and all. But despite all the protective gear and everything, it is very. I'm very scared a lot of times, and it sometimes gets really overbearing because they are in a profession where they cannot, like many other doctors can, maintain a distance from their patients. They have to go close to the patients. So, and I'm sure, many people, many children of doctor who have doctor parents go through the same. What would you suggest I can do to assure myself as well as them? I don't think they need that assurance because, I mean, they don't show it or whatever. I don't know, but and my father is in within the bracket of the risk category. So, but age wise, so what would you suggest?
See, the first thing is, of course, there is danger and risk in a lot of things we are doing now in the context of this epidemic, and a lot of doctors have fallen ill. And some of the doctors have also succumbed because they themselves did not get enough mental health support. So one of the things we can do is how can we kind of infuse positive energy into people who are in the medical profession when they come home, in terms of cheering them up without seeming to do it obviously. So if you can create circles of happiness when they are home, that will boost their immunity. And as responsible professionals, they will take care. So, and I'm sure in most situations, unless an accident happens, I'm sure they will be safe. So this fear is what we need to deal with in terms of telling ourselves, yes, things will be okay. And untoward anything happens, all of us have the strength to deal with it. Sometimes what happens is if you keep thinking about it, it fuels a lot of other kind of fears, which then become very difficult to respond. So we need to have self-talk and figure out or talk to other people who can understand and maybe help us resolve this issue in our head. Second, in terms of appreciating, being cheerful, being positive, helping them boost their immunity by creating positive atmosphere, these could help. I don't know what else can help because in your situation, you'll have to figure out what will help. But I'm sure as doctors, they will take the precautions because they know the kind of risks. And let us hope and pray for the best. That's the only thing we can do. But we need to be positive about this, because I'm sure we'll be able to tide over this, as many have already and continue to do.
I think the fear escalated probably because recently there were a couple of their friends who were affected. Two of them died. So
Yeah,
I think that's where the news part also comes in, because the cases are
that's
rising each day.
no, that's true. No,
And
but I'm saying when you say rising each day, yes, numbers, because there was more testing, but also to look at in terms of deaths, because you also need to then, if you know that, if you can understand what is the cause of their death, maybe they died of sheer exhaustion if they've been working in the profession without a break, without them getting any kind of respite. So there are a lot of reasons why. A lot of times that doctors themselves dealing constantly with people who are ill, because the infrastructure is poor, dealing with more patients than they can handle, all of it can also overwhelm them. So we need to figure out, push the government to maybe create more facilities. So there will be a lot of things which we can push for. But as you said, it's true that when we hear of, read about doctors and others succumbing, it definitely makes us more fearful, definitely. But we can also need to. So therefore, what is my question is therefore what kind of solution finding can we work towards? Yeah. That's what I can suggest.
thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Question from Ishan. How do we deal with family members who can often have conservative beliefs in terms of minority rights and caste issues? The idea that people most closest to you have problematic opinions can be disheartening. Okay, that's the question.
Yeah, the first thing that I see in terms of, as I said, a lot, all of us are products of our, what should I say, conditioning. Second, if you have to have conversation with them, maybe we have to create more listening spaces where we ask them in terms of what has led them to this opinion. And then we can, if we can show some kind of divergence where their experiences may not have been whatever, it takes a lot of time. But we also need to be patient and compassionate with them, because that is their experience. So sometimes instead of getting irritated, understand where they come from and figure out if there can be some conversation spaces which over a period of time, they can also see things differently. So that will take time. Second, you also need to take care of yourself in the sense that, yes, difference of opinion with people who are very close to you can be very emotionally tiring and exhausting. Because sometimes they may not agree with what you're saying. Sometimes they may feel you are insubordinate, and they may say things which can hurt you, can upset you. So you need to figure, as I said in the morning, I don't know whether you're there, any kind of feedback which comes from them about you've become too good for, too big for your boots just because you study little, you think too much of yourself. All of this, you need to filter this feedback and to look at the fact that they're unable to understand where you come from, and therefore they're responding. So therefore, if you can filter, you can possibly lessen the hurt and kind of stress it's causing you. So it is multiple responses. It'll take a lot of time. You'll also have to have a support system who understands what you're going through. Who doesn't, people who support should not give you solutions, but understand what you're going through, because you'll figure out the solutions as you deal with this. But first is to take care of yourself and be a little compassionate with people close to you are very different in the way they think. It is possible the way they think is not conducive for a harmonious and a progressive society. But give them time, listen to them. Maybe they will figure out ways to change the way they think.
Ishan also mentions that he missed the chance of being in the video, but it was so beautiful to see you smile. Okay. Abhishek's question. In my limited observation, public intellectuals across the world, especially those who come from academia, tend to have this too cool for the room attitude while dealing with the general public. They keep their knowledge protected in dense books and among their equally humorless, dispassionate peers. They sneer at populists but embrace an elitist attitude towards average citizens. It is a case of what Majid Nawaz calls bigotry of low expectations. While we are right to criticize polarizing but popular figures like, say, Jordan Peterson or Sadhguru for their overreaching statements, what other alternatives do common people have to satisfy the hunger, not just for specialized knowledge, but also a personal sense of meaning and narrative derived from the education? Is fulfilling that need beyond the realm of the purpose of public intellectuals and academics in a society?
See, one important thing is the concern which Abhishek's had. This is exactly what I in a lecture which I attended by Abhijit Banerjee. He also said the same thing. He said a lot of the academics talk to themselves. They don't really so we need to understand to figure out who they are and figure out what's happening. If we can help them. So there are some academics who are reaching out, who are listening to people. There are people who are listening and talking and create larger circles of influence. Second, one response as what all of you have done is to create a space where we are talking and listening to each other, maybe in terms of where some of the questions may be answered satisfactorily, not satisfactorily, but at least conversations happening. So maybe we'll need to figure out how this can be done. But to expect academia and elite to come and have conversations, it's sometimes unrealistic, because also there's a lot of fear of a lot of these people, especially teachers, because in a public lecture maybe there's a fear that they may their inadequacy will be exposed. There are a lot of their own insecurities which may come through. So sometimes there are a lot of there is not sufficient engagement, and therefore, yes, we also need to have more balanced voices to counter those who are who claim to know everything or who have very strong opinions. Yes, that's a serious problem now. So at the moment, I don't know what kind of adequate response we can generate, because we've not had this kind of response from responsible intellectuals for a long time. And long time is about 20, 30, 40 years. So currently it's becoming very stark, because in this whole uncertainty, they seem to be the only voices which are visible. And therefore a lot of people would possibly gravitate towards them. So therefore we've not created a space where other people with that kind of influence, but for more balanced and open opinions are around. So that's an unfortunate thing. Yeah. Okay.
Question from Clinton. What is your vision of the future post-pandemic? How do you see the idea of capitalism? Will it remain the same as it was before the pandemic, or there's going to be a new ideology, a new way in entrepreneurship?
One thing I would request you to read a long article I sent by this economist Mariana Mazzucato that I think Abhishek has put. One request to Abhishek, this is what Ravina said, can we have a kind of a ready reckoner of articles and books put at one place, because now they're put at different spaces and things like that. So if you can work to create one ready reckoner which is available. So Clinton, if you can read this particular economist, she's talking about in terms of reforming capitalism and making capitalism more responsible, more inclusive. So there will be, so we'll need to have a balance between social control, individual initiative, enterprise. There is no one perfect solution. Whether in the post-pandemic will people really want to change, I don't know yet. My concern is I've not seen any real major change in the worldview of people. As I said, a lot of us are just waiting for things to get back to back to what they think is a normal. So how it will pan out, we'll have to wait for another 3 months to see. And meanwhile, if we read up and if we can also get other people to read and suggest policy changes, if there's a critical mass, maybe things may change. Okay.
Question from Sanjana. How can I deal with my habit of overthinking? Is it okay to overthink?
Copy that and paste.
The first thing is in terms of what is it that we mean by overthinking? Okay. There are 2 or 3 dimensions which I want to look at. One is we tend to brood on things which have happened, or brood over things which we think are not good enough. So that is something which is not moving forward. So therefore, if the focus of your thinking is on things which have happened in the past, or things which you think are not good enough, maybe you need to channelize your thinking toward other things. What do I mean by other things? So if you're overthinking about the future and what can happen, also channelize your energy to have some proactive and concrete steps. Every day, can you do something to make that future happen? So therefore, thinking is also reinforced by action. Thinking is also reinforced by something where you are moving forward in the direction where you want to. So when you say overthinking, we need to figure out what is it, what aspect of overthinking. Is it about the past? Is it about things which have gone wrong? Or is it focusing too much on inadequacy? Is it focusing on comparison? So if you look at what is it doing, uh, then you need to look at yourself and acknowledge yourself. Sometimes when you're comparing ourselves, we're not looking at how different we are, and therefore maybe what we can do should be very different. Like if I look at my speaking style and somebody else's speaking style, they may have much greater fluency than I have. Uh, but if I am somebody who's able to communicate well, that is good enough. I need to find out how I can increase fluency using my own style. So therefore, a lot of things we need to ask ourselves. I don't know whether you're there for the afternoon morning session. I have talked about Benjamin Brown's 6 things for mental hygiene. So look at those 6 things in terms of acceptance, and so some of those tools may help you maybe channelize energy. I hope that answers.
So we have 2 more questions to go. So do you want to address them?
There's no
now?
choice. We have to. there's no later. So.
Okay. So one is from Noel. How do we convince parents who do not acknowledge mental health and not just a bad mood that will pass?
That's a very difficult question. Maybe we'll have to get them, maybe nudge them towards reading or hearing people talk about mental health. As I said, parents, especially the older generation, is a product of their conditioning. So if they are not open to the belief in mental health, it will take a lot of effort. So one, in terms of if you can look at conversations, articles, or things which they can hear, which will possibly make them a little more open, maybe you're making some progress. So you'll have to continue to find out what kind of options you have to nudge them towards that. Second, whether others acknowledge or not, you will need to do a lot of self-care. You will need to overcome this whole frustration to say, yes, it's unfortunate that they are not acknowledging, but what do I need to take care of my own mental health? Do I seek help from elsewhere, or do I reorganize my thinking process? So figure out what are the kind of things which can work for you. But nudging parents will also have to figure out a language which they understand. So get them to see small snippets of things which talk about this, which in format. If it pushes them to a little bit more openness, your task will become easier, but it'll take time.
A question from Ishita. When most people around, even the ones we mostly share our issues with, are in distress, how right is it to share our problems with them?
Very good question. In terms of, any relationship should have a give and take. If you're listening to their concerns and their problems, at some point of time you must stop them and say, can you give me some time to listen to what I'm going through? Okay. So therefore, creating that space is important for you. One is that. Second, if in your circle there is nobody who can listen, look at helplines and external sources which can help, or reading or exposure which can help calm. Look at reflection which can help you figure out solutions. So again, as I said, this is multiple options. But at some point of time, all of us will also have to draw boundaries and say, I will listen. This is what I'm willing to listen. But please also give me time to listen and understand. And also, if people button, I request people, please listen to what I have to say, understand what I have to say. And most of us, when we talk to people, we don't need solutions. If people listen to us patiently and can nudge us in the right direction, every one of us will find relief, solutions. So we'll all find our own solutions. We just need somebody to listen to us so that the cobwebs in our head can be cleared. So where such listening channels are, we'll have to figure out how it works for you.
Thank you, sir. This was the last question for the last session today. So I have to do some formalities. First, I would like to thank everyone in the organizing team. So this was Anmol's idea. I don't know how many of you are familiar with him. And unfortunately, due to uncontrollable circumstances, he couldn't be with us while we planned the entire thing, but it was his idea to start this lecture series with Sudhakar sir. And then I would like to thank Nausheen, Abhishek, Shruti, Shridev, Vrishti, Anvesha, Vasu. All these people helped us throughout the sessions. Um, we are very grateful and lucky to have Sir, such a resourceful, experienced, and eclectic person between us. Also, all the facts, information, ideas, perspectives, book suggestions that you generously shared with us. We are very grateful for all that, and the questions. You were very patient with so many questions that came around. We have around 25 questions in a day. So thank you so much. As organizers, we were very worried about the numbers, if we would have and we would be able to maintain the numbers that join us every day, but we were not disappointed any day. And a lot of you attended most of the sessions. And also, thank you for all the questions you all asked, because it covered a lot of areas that we possibly didn't touch during the session. So thank you so much, all of you, again. And thank you, sir, so much.
Yeah, thank you, all of you. I mean, I must thank every one of you who participated. I've enjoyed the sessions. Thank you, Suhasini, Sheen, Shruti, Shridev, everybody, Abhishek. Thank you very much. And please, if somebody can just compile a book list, and if there's anything else we can do, we will explore possibilities. Thank you. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Bye.
Bye.
Good night.
Good night.
Bye, everyone.